today let's make a delicious and nutritious twist of a childhood favorite of mine, buttery tortillas, but this time with einkorn flour. I like to start by cutting up all of my parchment paper to put the raw tortillas on before we cook them on the comal or any hot surface that you're using. I'm going to be doubling this recipe so that I'll have extra tortillas to freeze for later, as well as some extra large tortillas to make breakfast burritos for freezing. We're going to start by melting a cup of butter. So like I said, we're doubling this, so everything that I am telling you, you can go ahead and cut in half if you just want to make about 9 or 10 tortillas, small ones. We're then going to get our einkorn flour ready while the butter is melting. So we're going to do 6 cups of einkorn flour. You can sub all-purpose flour if you like. This recipe calls for 6 cups of einkorn flour, 1 cup of melted butter, 1.5 cup of cold tap water, and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. Like I said, whack all that in half if you are just making a single batch of this recipe. I will link this recipe below for you as well so that you can refer to it whenever you would like to. Let me tell you why we use einkorn flour if you aren't familiar. It is the most genetically primitive form of wheat available on Earth, very nutrient dense. The science hasn't fully caught up, but it is easier to digest than your modern wheat because it contains less gluten or a different type of gluten than your modern wheat does. Einkorn's high in protein and it has 3 to 4 times more beta carotene, which is also an antioxidant, than modern wheat. So it can help boost immunity, prevent cancer and heart disease. It is high in the antioxidant lutein, 3 to 4 times higher than modern wheat. So altogether, it is just very nutrient dense, a lot easier to digest. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence on this, but we love it in our household. We cook pretty much everything with it. It's especially amazing to make a sourdough out of to further break down the gluten that is present, just to make a super powerhouse of a sourdough bread that you can eat without worrying about any stomach upset. So after incorporating all those ingredients together and kneading for a few minutes by hand, I will roll out the dough. You want to divide it into, pretty much this is up to you if you want little tortillas or big tortillas. Like I said, we're doing some of each. So I like my smaller tortillas to be about a golf ball size ball, and then my larger ones will just be double that size. And let me tell you, tortillas are a great way to incorporate your kids in the kitchen because they really can't do a lot of damage here. I mean, it's just some balls of dough, other than my kid who likes to eat the raw dough, so trying to keep him from doing that. It will take you so much longer than making these by yourself, but it is so much more fun. My kids absolutely love when they get to play with dough in the kitchen. So I give him a task. I tell him, hey, you make these into balls. And he's like, okay, Mom, I am on it. And he loves being given a job. Eventually, those little balls will turn into little flat pancakes all over the counter or maybe end up in other places in the house. But he just has such a great time. I love being able to include him in recipes like this. I feel like it is so hard sometimes to slow down and take our time with things these days, and to bring our kids alongside us is extra challenging. I know, trust me, but I'm striving to do this as much as I can with them, let them get acquainted with slowing down, with spending time in the kitchen, with not rushing, with taking our time. So these are just things that we are trying to do in our household, and I find that it makes us all a little bit happier. So sacrificing having an easy recipe that I can quickly whip up with no help is worth it to me. So these tortillas are definitely a labor of love. I do highly recommend doubling or even tripling this recipe and making these in bulk. I find that they freeze really well. Just don't forget the parchment paper between the tortillas when you freeze them so they don't get stuck together and tear once thawed, because that is so sad after all of this work that you've done. You could probably even freeze them raw. I have not tried that yet, but you can make them ahead of time and put them in the fridge raw and then pull them out when you're ready to cook them so that they're fresh in case you don't have time to prep the dough right before dinner, and you can do it maybe earlier or the day before. So I like to roll out my larger tortillas It is a little bit challenging because of the einkorn. If you're not familiar with einkorn, it's a little stickier, a little different than working with your modern wheat. Using lots of flour helps big time when you're trying to roll these out. A tortilla press really comes in handy. I come from a Hispanic family, so we really only used tortilla presses for corn tortillas, but using them for flour is such a time saver, makes the perfect little round tortilla. It is a little thicker if you do the tortilla press rather than rolling it out super thin, but I like a good fluffy flour tortilla, so this works out great for us. And we use these more than just for tacos. Sometimes the kids will just pull out a tortilla and rub some butter on it and eat it, so they're nice and filling. I do find, and I don't know if there's any science to back this up, but I do find that einkorn signals that you're full faster than other types of wheat. I could be off on that, but that's just what I have found when eating it. So another perk to using it, you feel fuller faster. So when you're cooking these tortillas, I like to heat up as many surfaces as I can just to get them as many cooking as possible at one time. I cannot find my comal right now, which is the little flat cast iron tortilla cooker, but I have this griddle and a couple of cast iron pans, so this is working out just fine. So when you're cooking your tortillas, you want to look for those air bubbles to start forming before you flip them. That's how you know that they're cooking thoroughly. If you flip them prior to this, you're going to end up flipping it back because one side's not fully cooked. This is just the rule of tortillas. Wait till you see the air bubbles, flip it, cook it for, like 30 more seconds on the other side, and then throw them in your tortilla warmer. Y'all, this tortilla warmer is very special to me. I bought this on one of my adored shopping trips in Mexico with my momo. We would go shopping with her for vestidos or dresses for her Mexican clothing boutique that she ran in South Texas. So these are some of my most cherished memories, especially now that she's passed, getting to go spend those days in Mexico with her shopping and just having so much fun. We would go, we would shop, we would have an ice cold Sol, the Mexican beer, with a lot of lime and chile, and we would just have the greatest time. So every time I bring out this tortilla warmer, I'm filled with so many happy memories. So yes, a lot of happy memories for me around tortilla making, and getting to bring my kids along to do that is just really special. Even though we're not making them the authentic way that I was taught with the lard and the flour and rolling every tortilla out, my grandma was such a beast in the kitchen when it came to making tortillas. She would roll them out so fast and so perfect. I just couldn't believe it. I still have not conquered being that great of a tortilla roller, but one of these days when I'm an old grandma, my kids and my grandkids will look at me the same way I looked at her, I hope. So there you have it, lots of beautiful, fluffy, nutrient-dense, easy to digest einkorn tortillas. Here's some big ones for burritos or breakfast tacos, and you can see that they bend really easily. You can roll them up. They're not going to break on you. That's the sign of a good tortilla. It's easily pliable and nice and soft. And I do have a couple of, and here are my duds. That's okay. They're nice and crispy. We'll feed them to the kids. They're going to love them regardless. Thanks for making tortillas with me. If y'all enjoyed this video, please check out my other videos on from scratch cooking, being in the kitchen, motherhood, all the good stuff. See you next week.